Hello and welcome to Chakra News. West Asia is on the boil once again. Israel and Iran are at war. It's an unprecedented conflict. Missiles are being fired at each other. Both Iran and Israel have launched ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and Israeli fighter jets are taking out targets in Iran. Now, in the middle of all of this, there are, of course, Indian students who are stuck in Iran. There are wider repercussions if the conflict expands. And to understand the state of play in West Asia, currently I have with me Dr. Varuzhan Geghamyan, who's assistant professor at the Yerevan State University of Armenia, to understand the state of play currently in West Asia. Dr. Geghamyan, welcome to Chakra News.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Straight off, Dr. Geghamyan, what's the situation in Iran right now?
We don't have any, at least for the moment again, we don't have any assumptions that the border will be closed. So for now, and at least for the future days, we know that this is going to be operable. And being a neighbor and being the friend of Iran, Armenia, I think that has no reasons to close the border at all, because I know that we should also provide some assistance in case the Iranian side will need it. I mean, the humanitarian assistance, the other type of assistance that could be of importance for Iranian side. As for the rest of the information, like what's going on, we are following the news as the whole world is doing, and unfortunately, right now probably the developments are going into the worst case scenario, which is the further escalation of the conflict and further escalation of the war. So unfortunately, the predictions from our side are not good as well, and if no negotiations and no real talk here, probably we are going to have further escalation, which is going to be more and more closer to the borders of the regional countries. And we have already witnessed one example of drone attack on Iran from the north of Iran near the border of Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic, which is under Azerbaijan's control. And right there we had the operation of a drone, so it's very, very close to the border of Armenia and Azerbaijan. So and at any moment it can go further from the borders.
Right. Dr. Geghamyan, there are about 10,000 Indians who are in Iran, and there is a lot of concern about their safety. About 8,000 of them are, students who are studying in Iran. Now, Iran and Armenia, of course, are both friendly countries to us. We have excellent relations with both countries. Are you aware of the proposed transit of these students into Armenia via the land border? The MEA, India's Ministry of External Affairs, is making arrangements for transporting these students safely into Armenia. Would you know anything about that?
I don't have precise information. I've heard about that as well, and I think that this is very, very real in the sense that, as I told already, the border is operating on full scale, and taking into account the recent days attacks and the map of these attacks, we can say that this is going to be a very safe exit from Iran through the territory of Armenia, and I don't think that there are going to be any problems with this. So hopefully, this is going to be operable again in the upcoming days.
Right. Dr. Geghamyan, you mentioned the fact that there are fears that the war could escalate, and that's everybody's fear as well. Given the intensity of the missile and fighter attacks on both Iran and Israel, what are the implications, you believe, if this war continues for a few more days, at the intensity that it is being waged with currently, and other regional actors also get pulled into it? What do you think are the repercussions going to be on West Asia, particularly around Armenia, Azerbaijan, and all of the
South
GCC?
Caucasus. Yeah, correct. Probably I should mention three main possible developments in case the escalation continues. First, if it's going to be long-term war, then there is a high possibility that the war could happen or could have some implications or some demonstrations outside the territories of Iran and Israel. So, in other words, there could be operations which are being conducted by two sides on the territories of other countries. I'm taking into account not only the South Caucasus, where Armenia is situated, but also in general in the Middle East and larger the world, because if the Israel and Iran, they don't have direct border connections, so it means that the whole world could be a scene of war and scene of possible military operations. So this is a very, very bad development in case this is the case. So second thing is that there is a high possibility of the engagement of other regional actors as well as global players, and we have already seen that this war is in the focus of many players and many sides, which already made some very cautious announcement, but still they are engaged in the process of negotiations. And in case these negotiations fail, there could be much more, let's say, an active engagement of other players here, and namely, first of all, of course, the United States of America, which at this moment still says that they are not part of the conflict. They are the negotiators, and they are the mediators of the conflict. But in case we have the engagement of other sides and the US, there could be there is a high probability that this could develop into a more regional war rather than just Israeli-Iran war or Israel's attack on Iran. So in this case, any part of Middle East and particularly South Caucasus could be easily engaged into this as well. And given the fact that we have Turkey and Azerbaijan, which have, at least on some levels, they have ambitions to create a zone of influence not only in South Caucasus but also in the north of Iran, where there is a huge population of Turkic-speaking Iranians, and there is a constant work, and there was a constant work from Turkish, at least, side inside Iran with this population. So we can have also this development, and that's why on the Iranian side, in these recent days, we have so many discussions about, let's say, non-direct engagement of Azerbaijan into this war already. So, I mean, we have this possibility of this development as well, given the fact that in South Caucasus, there is only one place where Iran has direct connection, which is non-Turkic. It's the Armenian South province of Syunik, of which you already mentioned, the 44 kilometers long strip of land, and which is of vital importance for Iranian side. And given the ambitions of Turkey and Azerbaijan towards this strip of land, we can have further pressure on Iran here as well. So there is a possibility of military escalation around the Syunik province, around this small narrow strip of land. And the third factor, which is also important, we are dealing with an issue which has at least some nuclear elements in it. So, I mean, we are not saying that we have a nuclear war, but we are saying that there is a possibility that further escalation can bring nuclear threat into the center of the escalation. So that's, in that case, I mean, everybody should be worried, not only those who are living around Iran and Israel, but actually the world, because we are getting much more closer to the possible nuclear war in the globe, which is a devastating thing for any side, starting from India up to US.
Absolutely, everyone should be concerned with that. But Dr. Geghamyan, you also spoke at the APRI forum, at the India-Armenia panel. This was the conference that was organized between the 11th and the 13th of June. Makes sense for our viewers. Correct. What you spoke of, this zone of influence that Armenia and Turkey are trying to create. What are they trying to do really? Are they trying to revive the Ottoman Empire in the 21st century? What do they want?
Well, if I use that wording, then probably our listeners and viewers would say that he's an Armenian scholar, and that's why he has some let's say subjective and non-partisan views. So that's why I'm not using that wording. But instead of that, I would use more, let's say, scientific language to explain what they're trying to do. In very, very basic words, Turkey is trying to create its own zone of influence in South Caucasus, which is very important not only because it's a neighboring region for Turkey, so it's the eastern part, eastern border of Turkey, which is neighboring with South Caucasian countries, including Armenia, but also, and it very naturally creates security issues and interests for Turkey in general because of like just neighboring factor, but also because South Caucasus, because of its location as well as its terrain, it's a very mountainous region. It is centrally located in the Eurasian territory, and those who are in control of South Caucasus, or at least they have some part of influence over South Caucasus, they influence all the Eurasian politics and all the Eurasian processes, starting from logistics up to military escalations. So that's why very naturally Turkey, being a very ambitious country, by the way, a relatively big country and a middle power, as we call it in international relations, it very naturally tries to have its own zone of influence there so that it can first secure its further development in the region, as well as to influence the processes happening all over Eurasia, with Russia, with Iran, with India, with Black Sea region, Caspian region, Central Asian countries, etc., etc. So because of the, as I said, because of the geographic factor, terrain and location of South Caucasus, it becomes very important for Turkey. And what Turkey is trying to do, at least since 2010, when it had gained capabilities, I mean, military resources, financial resources, political resources as well, it tried to create this zone of influence. And very naturally, given the fact that Azerbaijan is an ally of Turkey and it's already in the zone of influence of Turkey, and they have a very huge leverage on Georgia, the only country which is out of this zone of influence is Armenia. And since 2020, since the so-called Second Karabakh War, when Azerbaijan, with the support of Turkey, managed to occupy the Nagorno-Karabakh and create its military presence there, now Armenia is very vulnerable, and in a very the situation is very fragile, and Turkey now tries to put much more pressure, so it has the full influence over Armenia, so that it has no obstacle towards that's a connection with Azerbaijan. And here comes the so-called project, which is famous by its name, Zangezur Corridor, which is in other words a military and political program of Turkey to have direct reach to its ally in South Caucasus, to Azerbaijan, and then go beyond. In other words, this is about the creation of this zone of influence, which will give Turkey an opportunity to reach to Central Asian countries, to the north of Iran, where we have Turkic-speaking Iranians, to the north of Caucasus, where we have Muslims living there, and Turkey pretending back in 1990s to have influence there as well. So in other words, this is about the zone of influence, which easily can be also coined as Neo-Ottomanism or Pan-Turkism or whatever you want you can call. But this is a literature, let's say, literary description of the actions. But in the essence, it's about military and political zone of influence which Turkey tries to create, and the weakness of Iran in case Tehran is going out of this conflict, let's say, more weakened, it is going to provide Turkey with much more influence and much more possibilities in South Caucasus, which eventually can also strengthen, for example, Turkey, Central Asian countries connection, Turkey-Pakistan connections, etc., etc. So this is going to have very larger and impressive implications. It's not just about Armenia or Armenian-Turkish conflict, but rather about more regional aspirations and ambitions of Ankara.
Very, very, astute observations, Dr. Geghamyan. And this is how we are viewing it from Delhi as well. In the last couple of months, there's been an alignment of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and to an extent, China also supporting Pakistan. We saw this during the ongoing Operation Sindoor. This alignment that you so vividly described for us, it has implications, security implications for both India and Armenia. Two countries that are completely opposed to this sphere of influence. You see this as bringing India and Armenia closer than we already are today?
Correct. I would bring a very, very, let's say, small example, but I think very impressive one. I mean, it is very clear for us here in Armenia, at least for those who are really dealing with the region and they are really knowing the nature of the states of Turkey and Azerbaijan. I mean, nature in the sense of what they try to do and what are their interests, and very naturally. So it is very obvious for us that Azerbaijan is an enemy. It's a country which is a threat. It presents a security threat to Armenia. And we know that Azerbaijan has a close ally in face of Pakistan. So because very easily, as an historical anthropologist with my education, when we are monitoring Azerbaijan, we see, for example, that in the schools and in elementary schools in Azerbaijan, on the walls you'll find not only the map of Turkey, but also and not only the flag of Turkey, but also the flag of Pakistan, for example. Okay, so I mean, you can easily find this checking for example, Facebook pages of some elementary schools in Azerbaijan. I mean, even in remote villages. So if we know that Pakistan is an ally to the enemy of Armenia, then very naturally, Pakistan is becoming not friendly country for us, at least, to put very, very polite way. Okay, and if we know that Pakistan is a security threat to India as well, so very naturally, Armenia and India are becoming not only good friends, civilizational friends, but also they're becoming friends based on mutual interests. So for both of us, the strengthening of Azerbaijan, the strengthening of Pakistan, the strengthening of their relations, their connection, makes us to sit on the same side of the table and think what we can do to at least deter the threat which is coming from the coalition of these two countries. As I said, fortunately, both for Armenia and India to do this, so to talk about possible mutual interests deterring our enemy coalition in face of Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Turkey, of course, it has a possibility to lay on the ground of civilizational connection, cultural connection between Armenians and the Indians. Both of us, we are Aryans. Both of us, we have a history of connection which goes not to the beginning of, I don't know, 2020 or 20th century, but it goes to the centuries. We have an huge Armenian presence, historical presence in India. We had relations which can be easily described as close civilizational partners and friends. So we have a heritage, Armenian heritage in India. We have, even during the Soviet times, we had a huge Armenian-Indian cooperation in Soviet Armenia. We have, I'm personally, I have a, in a way, Indian connection, because living in student dormitory back in my student years, I was living with Indian guys, Indian students. So I mean, we have many things in common, which provides additional layer, additional ground, a very profound ground for really interest-based relations between our countries. And I see that there is a huge potential for development of these relations. And one more important thing, which I, by the way, mentioned during the APRI forum, during the panel on India and Armenia, It's that our bilateral relations, they have also possibility to enlarge into multilateral relations. So besides Armenia and India, there are some other players which can be added to this coalition, to this partnership. Cyprus, Greece, at least, and I know your prime minister visited recently Cyprus in the recent days. So, I mean, there is a potential for this. There is a potential for development of a unique axis of all civilizations, starting from India up to Mediterranean, which can bring much more than just, interest-based deterrence coalition against our threats, but also it can bring development to other fields as well, starting from cultural up to political.
How do you see Prime Minister Modi's visit to Cyprus? He was there for 2 days recently, and he's the first Indian Prime Minister to visit in a very long time.
Correct.
How is this viewed from Yerevan's perspective?
Well, as you mentioned, this was a historical move, first of all, because if I'm not mistaken, last time Indian Prime Minister visited Mediterranean country was in 30 years ago. So, I mean, this is in many ways a historical thing. And given the fact that right now all the region, and including Eastern Mediterranean, which is actually considered as part of Middle East, is in flux, the region is in transformation, and the Israeli attack on Iran showed us that we are far from being in a new status quo, vice versa. The borders are very fragile. There is no status quo. There is no balance of power. And so very naturally, the transformations and new conflicts are on their way. So given all these facts, still the visit is very, very important. So it shows us that, at least in Yerevan, that India prioritizes the region, prioritizes the relations here, and understands the importance of this region for India and for East of Asia. So very naturally, I mean, let's say ordinary viewers cannot really understand the importance why for India Middle East should be important or South Caucasus should be important. But for us specialists, it is very clear. And Prime Minister Modi's visit to Cyprus further underlies this understanding. So this is the first thing. Second thing, which is important for us, it's that small countries like Armenia, Cyprus, they have a possibility to have an enlarge and cooperation with big countries, with larger economies, and there could be factors which are of mutual interest and can bring new cooperations. I mean, from the first glance, what connects Cyprus and India? Nothing. But if we go deep into that, we see that small, tiny island of Cyprus could be of interest for India for many reasons. Again, from geopolitics up to cultural, which brings us Armenians an understanding that in case of a good and direct and precise work with our Indian colleagues, we can have something like that here in our region as well. So Armenia can be a provider of Indian interests here in the region and vice versa. So this is the second thing. Yeah. And the last very important thing is that visit to Cyprus underlines the possibility for, as I already said, for this axis of or cooperation of an alliance or a league of ancient civilizations in our region. And this is very real to happen. Only there is a need for more constant and precise work here.
Right. Dr. Geghamyan, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts. It's fascinating discussion. You've given us so much more to think about.
Thank you very much. And
thank you, and have a good day.